Hello, and many thanks for joining us on the program. I am Imonia Marere. Perhaps the most topical issue in Nigeria today is insecurity. The security of the lives and property of Nigerians is the primary responsibility of government. This is as enshrined in the 1999 Constitution. However, the epidemic of insecurity across the country has driven fear deep into the hearts and minds of Nigerians. Not even children are being spared by the savages that have turned kidnapping and abduction into a booming business. A few years back, when the phenomenon of kidnapping for ransom started to rear its ugly head, especially in Zamfara and Kaduna states, we warned on this program that it was a clear and present danger that would develop into an epidemic if not immediately tamed. We cautioned at that time that it would bludgeon into a business franchise. Now, it is threatening the peace and security of the whole nation. Not a day passes by without the unpalatable news of a kidnapping and demand for ransom by the perpetrators. Many more go unreported. In 2011, Nigeria passed the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, providing a comprehensive legal framework to criminalize and prevent terror acts and financing. That act was amended in 2013 and again in 2022. Section 14 of the amended Act 2022 prohibits ransom payments to kidnappers. It reads, and I quote, "Anyone who transfers funds, makes payment, or colludes with an abductor, kidnapper, or terrorist to receive any ransom for the release of any person who has been wrongly confined, imprisoned, or kidnapped is guilty of a felony and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment of not less than 15 years. End of quote. Now, ransom payments pose several challenges, including encouraging more kidnappings, creating a vicious circle, funding criminal organizations, and worsening overall security in the country. It also undermines the legal system in Nigeria, amongst other negative implications of this process. Now, on face value, the law sounds good. But what happens when a life or lives are at stake? What should citizens do when the state, with all of its apparatus, fails to provide protection against kidnappers and terrorists? Will citizens be right or wrong to resort to self-help when they find themselves in a life-threatening situation, such as we have seen in recent times? These are the questions that we will try to unravel on the program today. And I'm joined in the studio by two gentlemen, Dr. Ferdinand Ekwang, former National Coordinator, De-Radicalization Program, Director, Horizon Edge, our security outfit. He's now Obong Dr. Ferdinand Ekwang. Thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Also joining us is Michael Mbanefo. He's a lawyer, an engineer, and a security analyst. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Right. Let's take this very short snippet from the Minister of Defense, who spoke after a Federal Executive Council meeting a few weeks ago on this whole issue of ransom payments.
We believe we have to stop, as painful as it is. We have to stop responding to payment of ransom. If we stop, over time, the kidnapping will not be profitable, and they will stop. It's not easy though, but that is the rule that you all know. So we want to call in the people to please manage kidnapping situation very intelligently and very quietly.
Who are in such very tight situations deal with situations where kidnappers demand for ransom for the release of their loved ones. We'll be looking at all of this right after this time out. Stay with us.
The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us, Dr. Ferdinand Ikwang and Mr. Michael Mbanefo, my guests. Gentlemen, welcome. Well, let's begin this way. It appears, Dr. Ikwang, that there is a heightened situation of insecurity in Nigeria today across different regions. Now it's not limited to one part or the other. Every day you hear or read of stories of kidnappings, abductions, and demand for ransoms from different parts of the country. What do you think has given rise to this renewed onslaught on innocent Nigerians?
Thank you for that question. I think mostly accountability issues gave rise to what we are seeing today, that people were not being held accountable for what happened within their area of responsibility. Now we are seeing a change in the attitude of the players in the field. Recently, the CDS sent a fact-finding mission, and they came back and gave him reports. But within his sending the fact-finding mission, he deployed special forces. That has not happened for a very long time. So I think now things have changed. Now, for your question, accountability. Now people are being held accountable for what is happening within their AOR. We borrowed something from the civilian sphere when we used the word, the buck ends at the president's table. That is a civilian mindset. Or let me say that is a businessman's mindset. It's not the mindset of the security operative. You as the commander in the field, things are happening within your AOR. You cannot say it is the president that is responsible. You are the one responsible for your AOR. There was a time, if something happened, you will be severely sanctioned. I'm sure those of us in this table, we are old enough to remember this word, Mr. Etmiyan, where is Anini? And when that happened, within weeks of that statement being made, Anini was brought out. So there was a time in 72 Para Battalion in Benue where the commander told everybody gathered and said, you people are joking, but this is not going to happen within my AOR. And he went out and ensured that nothing happened within his AOR. I also remember when somebody made the same statement, it happened, he came back and sat down and was making excuses. Some people with red caps came in, or red berets came in and took him out and carried him out. Those days have to be returned, that people have to take responsibility for what is happening within their area of responsibility. Our soldiers are the most competent group of people I have ever worked with. They know what to do. but you have to give them the order to do what is right. Do you know the DPO is more powerful than the Inspector General of Police when it comes to assessing his area of responsibility? The DPO can, and is the one who is supposed to tell his line commanders that this matter that is going on here is beyond the capacity and capability of the police and will require the military. It is the responsibility of the DPO, not the responsibility of the Inspector General of Police. So if every DPO, if every director of service who is on ground, and every army commander on ground decides that this will not happen within my area of responsibility, I don't think the president needs to worry himself. And when we imbibe that into our security consciousness, then all this will stop.
Mr. Benefo, let me come to you. Are we being overwhelmed? When I say we, as a country, as a government, being overwhelmed by insecurity?
Well, to me, it appears that we are being overwhelmed. But we cannot be overwhelmed in a situation where we take absolute responsibility of our area of responsibility. If a man whose community is 20 persons in that particular community, and he knows each and every one of them by his name, it means that he simply knows them at least to their home, or better still to their work, or better still to what they stand for. So when they turn around and say, oh, we do not know what is happening in our community, it's being clever by half. I think deployment of security agencies is one thing. Deploying responsible security agents is another. I think the problem with Nigeria borders around corruption. If a man chooses not to be responsible, there is no amount of responsible work you give to that person that he will take charge of. When a person, for example, is deployed to go and take charge of kidnappers, and assuming you come across such person and your focus is money, there is nothing. You are as useless as the security person, as the person who is breaching the security. Currently, we have succeeded in allowing the criminal and criminal elements to enlarge their coast. So as it stands, they've developed a symbiotic relationship with some cocky security agents, with due respect to what anybody wants to believe. But then, it's one thing to be a part of the security force. It's another thing to also understand the street. There is no way people will take responsibility of their actions and the same thing repeats in the same community. If you do it 10 times and the security people are able to nip you on the board 10 times, crime will go away from those areas. A paramount ruler who once upon a time was in the street, do you expect him to become a paramount ruler and begin to attack his own people? They are the same flesh and blood. So we have to begin to install people in institutions where responsible people are required to be, and people who imbibed in themselves individual qualities of self-awareness, people who inculcate in themselves that act of patriotism, oneness, love for one's nation, so that we can forge ahead. Other than that, overwhelming insecurity situation is an understatement.
Now, how critical or how much does the enactment of laws help in curtailing the situation we find ourselves right now?
Enactment of laws, for example, you mentioned earlier that paying ransom to a kidnapper becomes a crime.
It's a felony.
It's a felony. It's enshrined in the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act.
I agree with you. I want to ask you a very modest question. Should the Inspector General of Police first son or only child be abducted by a kidnapper who he cannot readily have access to, and they demand ransom of 5 million? He will say no, he will not do it because it's a law. with due respect, is an irresponsible law when the security paraphernalia is not in place. You kidnap my mother, you go to the police, they say bring money. They don't know what they are doing. They don't know what to do, or rather they know what to do and they choose not to do. I'll be waiting for security to go and save my mother. Let them put me in prison for saving my mother. That's just the truth. We make obsolete laws. Most of the laws we enact, before the law is passed into law, it dies on arrival. I'll give you an example. In this studio, we talked about this issue of victims of gunshot. You go to the hospital, they refuse to take the person because of gunshot because police will arrest them. And they made a law. Those laws are obsolete. It doesn't work. Somebody has to hear English before you can communicate with him in English. You don't write Arabic and then go and tell the person who will come and read what you've written. It won't work. We just have to make sure, first of all, a lot of people in the parliament who makes these laws, once upon a time, they're either retired criminals or one thing or the other. So how do they make law that work against them? How? It will not work. We just have to be, I appreciate the fact that most of the time we want to come to studio to say things politically. If we want to tell ourselves the truth, we are dying. We are dying. I heard Ned Nwoko talking about passing a bill that will allow people to hold their own gun. I think that's a fantastic thing for anybody to do. That means any armed robber that goes to a street will know that virtually everybody there has a gun. So the case of your life or your money will not be there. It's his own life or his gun. So we must begin to make legislations that are viable, that can nip the current situation we have in the country on the board.
Dr. Kwang, you have been a practitioner in this field, and when the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act was enacted first in 2011, there was a need to amend it 2013, and then again in 2022. It was the 2022 amendment that brought in this issue of ransom payment being a felony. How well has it worked since then?
Well, the law has worked well. When we were operating it, for us, it was very, very useful because we were a task force and we had to move away from some of the laws that held our hands very, very tight. And that law gave us leeway to operate. And I must say that I'm grateful to those who enacted those laws, the Terrorism Prevention Acts in particular, because my entire operations depended on that law to succeed. And it did a lot for us because it gave us room to make sure that we nip everything in the bud. It might surprise people to ask, how did we achieve the peace that brought election between Dr. Goodluck Jonathan and President Buhari? There was peace, but that was a very bad period, but we achieved peace. So some of the laws there are very well crafted, and it gives the security personnel the authority, the capacity to do his job. Later on, most of the laws there clashed with what was in the Constitution. And the Constitution is very clear. Any law which is at variance with the Constitution takes preeminence. So you cannot operate that kind of law when some of the laws here says something else. But let me stay on this. Whenever we talk about self-defense, we fall back to look for new laws. Nigeria has enough laws, enough. Just take the Constitution and read it. I worked under a president who would never give you a section of the Constitution. He would tell you something like, the law says this, that, but he would never tell you. When you ask, he will say, go and get the Constitution and read. In trying to find what he told you, you have to read the Constitution. And I was opportune to be there, so I read a lot of this. Self-defense is already in the Constitution. You don't need somebody to tell you whether to carry firearms or not carry firearms, or whether to defend yourself or not defend yourself. It is very clear. The primary responsibility of the president is security and welfare, not your self-defense. The responsibility of the governor is the security and welfare, not your self-defense. There is nobody in this country who is in charge of your self-defense. You are in charge of the self-defense. Nobody can come and tell you not to defend yourself. It is against the law. Section C says that if somebody comes at you with intention to kill you, you have every right to defend yourself, even if it means the life of the person. And it continues by saying that it is illegal for you not to defend yourself. I'm just paraphrasing. So nobody can wake up and tell you, oh, you shouldn't defend yourself. How does a group of terrorists write a letter to a community that they are coming to come and attack them, and somebody stands up and says that they should not make arrangements to defend themselves? That never happened before. That's why I said, if we start pushing the laws back to people who are in charge of the area of responsibility and stop this thing that we say the buck stops at the president's table, we will see results. Because right now I'm hearing there was a kidnap and there was a killing of Obas in a particular region, kidnap of school children in a particular region. The entire people in the bus, they were taken. And as at this morning, we have a DPO there, we have a commander there, we have a director of service in that zone. There are some of those people I have just mentioned who will wake up and go wild. They will not listen to anybody beyond and make sure that nobody can mention that kind of thing around them. For you to wake up and say, oh, this happened when I was posted to Ekiti. This is what happened under my watch. There are people who will never take that. They will rather do and go and say, I am sorry, rather than take permission to chase those people and bring those people back. You know, when we imbibe that kind of thing and then bring it back into the system, where the man, the commander in the field is requested, told, ordered to take responsibility for his area where he is paid to do his job, then all this will stop. I'm telling you, there was a time when the Minister of Defense could call a brigade commander or a GOC and ask you what is happening in your area of responsibility. He's not interested in you telling him anything other than what is happening in your area of responsibility. The man replies, nothing, sir. And when he does that, he goes back and ensures that nothing is happening in his area of responsibility. There was a time like that. We need to bring that back. And I'm happy to see what the Chief of Defense Staff is doing. Gradually, it may take a little bit of time, but I'm sure that they will arrive at something, because I've seen the free hand that this particular president has given the military. And I've also seen the direction that the military is going. There was a lot of political, let me say, dregs that dragged a lot of things down and didn't allow people to move. But the way things are going now, I pray that we keep up the momentum, and also pray that this kind of thing that is happening now in the plateau is extended to the northeast, and we will see results.
Mr. Mbanefo, the military obviously cannot be everywhere in Nigeria. Besides, constitutionally, the security, internal security, is the primary responsibility of the police and other paramilitary agencies, and of course the intelligence community and all of that. But it does appear that all these agencies are either not working closely with each other, or in fact working at cross purposes. Because look at the FCT, for instance. After the very sad situation of the young lady who was kidnapped with her siblings and then killed, and the ransom was demanded, raised, and paid, it has continued. I mean, in the last couple of days, we have heard of a number of other kidnappings within the Federal Capital Territory itself. We have also heard of the killings of traditional rulers in Ekiti, kidnapping of school children in Ekiti, the killing of a traditional ruler in Kwara, and the abduction of his wife and children by abductors who are also demanding ransom. Now, when situations like this arise and security agencies are unable to track and arrest the abductors, or where they secure the release of such abductors, and we don't hear anything, secure the release of such abductees, and we do not hear of anything about the abductors themselves, how much confidence does that give the populace, the innocent Nigerians who just go about their day-to-day activities?
Well, first of all, the issue of synergy among the security forces is a very big issue. A very big issue in the sense that I know for certain, for example, the Chief of Defense Staff takes charge of the defense of the nation. We are not at war. But when the army seems to be everywhere, what it simply connotes is that the police has failed. Let us call a spade a spade. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that the Nigerian police force cannot know if they want to know. There is nowhere, no manner of information they want to gather that they cannot gather. It boils down to responsibility. As for having hope in the security system, whether we like it or not, partial current is not full current. If the army is doing well and some other security agency has failed, they have jointly failed. There's nothing like partial current. I am as confused as every other person. If the army, you said they cannot be everywhere, they can be everywhere. But the issue is, who does the Constitution give this, what my brother calls it, is it, what did you call it again? ROI or whatever?
Area of responsibility.
Area of responsibility. The highest investigating body today is Nigerian Police Force. But you see, the intelligence unit of security, everybody wants to be in the place where you can get one small money on the other. You gather intelligence, you don't want to share intelligence for reasons one cannot explain. Unfortunately, the army, yes, they have their own internal intelligence gathering, but that is not their primary responsibility. It is not their primary responsibility. It is for the police to jointly say, big brother, look, this is the intelligence I gathered. They are going to attack so and so place. Can you assist? Then, trust me, when the man in khaki is standing there with or without gun, nobody will near there now. Unless you want to commit suicide. But the problem is that synergy. Everybody wants to make that name. But unfortunately, a wrestler is different from a kickboxer. They just have to answer their name. What the other arm of it is that too many duplication of duty. Have you ever seen where they sent military for any operation that they failed? It is almost impossible to send the army man who has been getting training. He has not shot gun. He will only want to exhibit his expertise by just show me where they are. Go to the police today. The mobile section, the combatant section, nobody wants to go there again. Everybody wants to be where he will be getting people who will grant bail and collect some money. We won't come to the TV to begin to patronize anybody. We have to say it the way it is. Without the army today, trust me, we would have run away from this country. Apart from the Nigerian military, I'm not trying to patronize them. I am a person who wants to say my mind the way it is. Apart from the army, perhaps the DSS. By now, heaven knows where we would have been. We would have done tactical maneuver too. Maybe to Cameroon or to Niger or Chad. But within the internal system, the president needs to do something about the Nigerian police with due respect. But the army, they need to encourage them and also allow them to do their work. Not when they see somebody begin to dictate to them rule of engagement. Don't shoot somebody who is having a gun in his hand. What is he doing with a gun? Okay. Especially an AK-47. Any rifle other than double barrel, the one that is allowed for hunters. What is somebody doing with AK? Even pump action in the forest, is he a hunter? Even if he's a hunter, does he have license to hunt? Because you have to have license to enter the bush to begin to kill the forest reserves. We just have to be honest to ourselves. And at the same time, pray. I am happy the Chief of Defense Staff is not a person who you can come here and he will patronize you, no. The crop of the security system we have now is just, I don't know. But for the army, like I said, okay, look at it. If you go to anywhere, especially the southeast, because I hear people keep talking not. There is no, we are in trouble in the southeast. That's where I come from. There are so many communities in Anambra State, particularly, that cannot go to their village to bury their loved ones. They have to go and quickly talk the person into the grave, then run to Onitsha, Holy Trinity Field to go and do reception. What nonsense is that? For some of us who, by the grace of God, we can, if they allow us to protect ourselves, we can protect ourselves if it requires for us to protect ourselves. It's just for them to sign and say, okay, defend yourself and let it be. My brother here said something about the Constitution and the right to defend yourself. But unfortunately, the law doesn't work that way. Somebody enters your house, you pull out a pistol and kill him. Police arrest you the next time, they leave the subject matter and begin to ask you, how did you get a pistol? So you have to kill somebody, then you see an aspect of law that tells you that your temper would have cooled down and some kind of semantics. You understand? So it is not, I mean, if guns were not outlawed, only outlaws will carry guns. But what we are saying is that let them give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. If you bring out a soldier to the road, you should allow him to do the soldier work and not to begin to turn into police or road safety or VIO or better stay. What's the other one again? You know? You just have to allow them. It's not about, okay, look at the Americans that were kidnapped somewhere in Niger. What happened? The Americans know that the reporting system here is failed. They came in, took their person, left, and notified they've come, they've conquered. Nigerian army is better than all these people. They can enter anywhere and do anything, perform any magic. Just give them that command. They say American commandos. Nigeria have more commandos than anywhere in the world. Just allow the commandos to go and do commando work and you see results.
All right, Dr. Kwang, let me bring you back to this whole question of the legal bottlenecks that go with kidnapping, abductions, and ransom payments. Now, the general implication or the complication with this Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, Section 14 specifically, is that which criminalizes the payment of ransom. About, like you said, when you are caught in a situation where a family member, a relative, a friend, or whatever is being kidnapped, as is beginning to happen almost on a daily basis, even right here in the Nigerian capital, which is the seat of power, almost unhindered. And what should individuals do? What should family members do? Do they obey the law? Or do they first and foremost seek the release, the safe release of the kidnapped individual?
Well, thank you. I will start this way. You cannot beat a baby and expect that baby not to cry. You can't also say people should not pay ransom when you haven't made arrangements to defend and protect those people or to protect and secure those persons. It's a dicey and very slippery road for us to walk around when we talk about ransom payment. The third thing I would say in this is somebody has to know about the existence of a law in order for the person to obey the law in the first place. It is only when they say ignorance of the law is not an excuse that you actually know that some of these laws actually exist. As you're reading it, there are people who never heard it before. Those of us who had to basically study the document are those who even knew that these laws exist. But then, I always say this, how do you tell a family not to defend themselves only for you to be called in with troops the next day to find them all slaughtered? How do you go home to your own family to sleep when you told them not to defend themselves? Now, let me give you an example of why I'm saying that. There are some places in Nigeria we called ungoverned spaces. There are those we called ungovernable spaces. The ungoverned one is if something happens to you and you call the security forces, before they get to you, maybe it's the next day. That is the closest somebody can come to rescue you. It's ungoverned space. There's nobody around. And then the ungovernable one is that even the security personnel around there are also protecting themselves. I saw in a place where a lot of security personnel are there with guns, but they chain their generator to the ground. And I was like, even in your own barracks, you chain generator, then something is definitely wrong in that zone, that you can't keep your own generator outside. So those spaces where even the security personnel are afraid, let me not say afraid, it is an undesirable place to be. They are ungovernable. So when you are in this zone and you know that when you call security personnel, their response time will be 24 to 48 hours, then you need to defend yourself. If you are in an ungovernable section, you need to defend yourself. There was a time that Boko Haram was very, very hot. And then we were in the northeast. There are places you go and you see things, you keep quiet and you walk away. And I've gone to a commander to say, I drove to their base 3 hours. From where we were to their base, 3 hours. And after we discussed and I said, if we call you, how long will it take you to get there? He said, multiply what the hours you came here by 2. And that's very, very close.
6 hours.
So it will take them 6 hours to respond to us if we need reinforcement. And we just had to make other plans. So these things exist. It is not in isolation. It's not in isolation. When you carry that law and you look at it, and there is nothing really that the security services or forces can do. Well, I don't know who has the power also to prosecute somebody for that law.
The law says it attracts 15 years imprisonment.
Who prosecutes? But let's take this as an example. The lawyer you're talking about, whose daughter was killed, and he was begging the NBA to help him with money to pay ransom after they paid the first one and it wasn't enough. Now, after this man has lost the daughter, who is supposed to prosecute him? Because it was very clear, open to everybody that he paid ransom. Now, who is going to prosecute him?
And there's also the traditional ruler in Imo State who said openly that, look, I wasn't rescued by the police. I paid ransom.
Exactly. So now, the question would be for us to come back to say, who prosecutes these individuals when this happens? You cannot beat a baby and say, don't cry. If we had that kind of position that happens in other countries, let me not mention those countries, that if somebody kidnaps you, they will be there to get you out. Then if you pay ransom, you are actually jeopardizing the lives and the entire operations if you pay ransom. That is different. But when you're operating in an environment where you have to fall back and rely on yourself, then it is very difficult. And I will say, I pray that people don't find themselves in those situations, the security personnel.
It's a big dilemma.
Total one. I mean, I can't even, I'm trying to run the whole thing around my head right now, assuming something like this happens. I am the one sent to go and pick these people, and I am faced with this situation. What will I do? You know, it's a dilemma. But if we are given, if the police is given the authority and then supported to do what they are supposed to do, I also think the police have the capacity to do this job. Our security situation in Nigeria is very peculiar. Very, very peculiar. There are places you go, even when you say there is no synergy, sometimes you're given accurate intelligence by the DSS. You get accurate intelligence. But how do you get to do your job? The logistics to get to that place also sometimes becomes a problem. The politics around the entire thing also becomes a problem. So I would say that our security situation is dicey. But having said that, in the past few months, we've seen the build-up in the background, which is now showing slowly. And I think with this now, the police, I've also seen police being very proactive. This didn't happen. I don't like comparing situations because when you do this security comparison, you're actually saying when 1,000 people die, you say, okay, 1,000 people died last time. It is less this time. But human beings died. You can't make that comparison. But I'm saying that the security build-up we are seeing now in the past 2 months, the security build-up in the background that has now started to surface slowly is something to gladden the heart. The police have recorded successes too. The military have recorded a lot of successes so far. But then, the kidnappers are having the upper hand for now. But I hope and I pray that the security services will be allowed to continue with this momentum so that it will ginger everybody. That is why I said if we leave this Abuja talk, leave the top commanders talk and start talking to people who are on the ground and say, go ahead and do your job, I will support you. And when they do that, support them. If your boss asks you, say, I'm sorry, sir. But let the job be done in the field. You think these boys, our boys within the police, within the DSS, within the military, don't know how to or where to find these people? If you were to say, in a state, this state is in your hands, who is in charge of this state? Within 24 hours, I want these people apprehended. There is no state in Nigeria that doesn't have a number of entry and exit points. None. There is no state you say is in isolation. Bayelsa has access to the sea, but they have an entry point from Rivers State, from Delta State. Entry and exit. There are places you cordon out, and nobody leaves that zone. And within 24 hours of carrying out that kind of operation, you will apprehend those people. There's no way. But I'm saying, and I hope that people are listening, let us move back to the states. Let us move back to asking commanders in the states, what is happening in your AOR? If I say area of responsibility, they might not get it, but when you say, what is happening in your AOR? And let them do like before, nothing, sir. And that nothing, sir, will mean that when they go back and somebody said they kidnapped somebody, they say they didn't kidnap anybody here. And that will be the end of it. But when we keep saying the buck stops at the president's table, so now every commander in the field have to wait for a presidential order before they take action. No, they should take action before it gets to the president.
Mr. Mbane, for some arguments have been made along the lines of that in the fight against Boko Haram in the Northeast, the JTF came in very handy. And there are those who are insisting or pushing now to say, look, let us get to the communities. Let's get information and intelligence at the community level. Let's mobilize the people at the community to provide all that is needed for security agencies to work with. In other words, yes, there are those who call it state police. There are others who say civilian JTF at local levels, and that could become more effective in tackling this spate of kidnappings and abductions.
Well, in this instance, the issue of AOR comes again into play. What is happening in your area of responsibility?
Full stop.
In my village, there's a village head.
Of course. Clan head.
There's a youth leader.
President General.
There's a president general. There are the youths. They know themselves. Even in electoral process, if you are not on ground, you cannot win, even if you share rice and corn beef. It is the people that are on ground that will tell you, okay, go and see that man. Go and see this man. Go and see this man. Leave the rest. It means that in every community, in every settlement, there is the owner of the dog. If you go to somebody's house, you can't be directing his dog who to bite and who not to bite. It's the owner of the dog that will direct the dog who to bite and who not to bite. The president is not from Anambra State. The chief of defense staff is not from Anambra State. The chief of army staff is not from Anambra State. What can he do other than intelligence he gathers from the community? It is the man who you put there, from the state commissioner to the area commanders, to the divisional police officers, right? To the operations, and the rest of them. With these people put in place, all the president needs to hear is that
Outcome.
DPO has dislodged so-and-so terrorism group in so-and-so location as directed by the commissioner of police, whom he directed to go and take charge of the state. How do you expect a crime that surges up in a state to be the responsibility of the president? Then why is the commissioner of police there? It boils down to, again, area of responsibility. If you fail there, they should sack you. In fact, the proper law to make is not to begin to make law for people not to pay ransom. By the grace of God, the Constitution is very clear on that. The provision of the Constitution is that even when there are subsidiary legislations put in place, and that subsidiary legislation is not curing any lacuna or any opening in the Constitution, it will abet to the extent of its inconsistency with the Constitution. You want to give a man gun to shoot a kidnapper who has kidnapped somebody. Then the person has a better bullet, which is money. He pays the money, say you prosecute him. The Constitution will forbid you, because the mindset of the legislature in that angle is for people to mitigate unnecessary expenses where necessary, not when you pay money to save somebody, you say you should go and prosecute the person. They should prosecute the commissioner of police of the state, prosecute the area commander of that community where that crime happened, prosecute the divisional police officer who is in charge of that area of responsibility. It's a symbiotic situation, my brother. If you dig 6 feet to bury somebody, you must make sure that you close it 6 feet back, minus the casket and the person inside. Otherwise, anytime you come a year after, you will notice that somebody has tampered with the ground. That's why you see when they bury somebody, the quantity of sand they removed, they make it like a mound, so that as it's sinking, it will level the ground accordingly. So my brother is right. I think, you know, this is area of responsibility is an almighty formula. There's a mathematical equation that time. For some of us who were not very friendly with maths, you just ask him, what's that almighty formula he gives you? You start solving and you get to the thing. So the almighty formula in this instance is the area of responsibility. So in this regards, from what you've said, synergy one, whether northeast, southeast, wherever there's crime, it is a crime. So we have to begin to hold the people in that region accountable, because sometimes all this welfare, community like carry him to DPO, this one carry that to DPO, he forgets that he came there to work. So by the time they prosecute him for relaxing too much, you understand, he will know that he come to do works. Sometimes you bring yam or whatever you bring, you say, hold it. That's all.
Now, but all of this is based on the assumption, Dr. Ferdinand, that the crimes committed in such communities are committed by the people they know or who live and operate in those communities. But situations have arisen severally where those who perpetrate such crimes outside of such communities, who come from outside of such communities to carry out such criminal acts and recede. How do you deal with situations like that?
Well, for me, I think I mentioned earlier, every state, every community has an entry and an exit point. The first thing you do when you get on ground is to familiarize yourself with this area. There was a time they told us that ghosts were planting bombs. You cannot be arrested at some point. And when they asked him, I said, I've never seen that since I was born, that a ghost is able to do that. If they are human beings, we will find them. Now, a human being can run how fast? A car goes 75 kilometers per hour. So you make your calculation. Give yourself a radius. If something happens in this point, it will take a human being how long to move on a bike, on a car, and what is the terrain like that will allow the person to move? How fast and how far can somebody move within this zone? And if you can block the exit and the entry point, it's very easy. Be proactive. That's what I will tell those whose AOR these things happen. Be proactive. Find these areas. Put your men there waiting. If there is a crime, make sure that you cordon off the entire zone. Nobody goes in, nobody comes out. Those people, you can only hide for between 5 and 8 days. Because once your food supply, your water supply, your communication is cut, you can only exist between 5 to 8 days before you're caught. These are not things that we should say, but to answer your question, nobody can come from the sky. The person has to come from somewhere. If you're a human being, you must eat somewhere, you must rest somewhere, you must have somebody somewhere, you must also need water and food. So you come from somewhere, even if you're staying in the forest. That forest is a location. And once we are able to pick out what your center of gravity is and remove that center of gravity, we will find you. And that's why I'm saying, let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to the basics. Since we've tried so many types of security architecture, there was a time when there was a relocation of the chiefs, service chiefs, to the zones. It didn't work. Do this, do that. It still didn't work. Now, let's go back to the basics. The basics was, I am in charge of Plateau State. I don't want to know what is happening in another state, but this state, if you bring your kaya here, you will carry it on your head. Full stop. So don't bother yourself about what is happening in any other state, but in that your state, you know every exit, you know every place. You're receiving intelligence on a regular basis from those who are supposed to give it to you. And you can nip in the bud anything before it happened. I knew a director in this FCT who, the man solved more problems behind the scenes than any other person I knew. 2 a.m., 3 a.m. is still awake, solving issues, getting into criminals' den to tell them and say, I know what you're planning, but you have not committed crime yet, too. But if you make that move, you have committed the crime. He will go to them after he gets information. And this place, the FCT, was so safe as at that time. People would not know those kind of people in order to appreciate them. But we might appreciate those who, after something has happened, and we say, oh, he was a good commander because he went to attack. What about the commanders who solve issues before they even happened? And lastly, let me say this. When you are in the field, you represent somebody. Your job is to make your boss look good. Your job is not to hand over problems to your boss. So if you are the commander on the ground, ensure that your boss is seen in a better light at all times. That should be your responsibility.
All right. Thank you so much. Ms. Ambane, for one last word as we round off our discussion.
Well, the only thing I can say, particularly for FCT now, there are a lot of wanderers, a lot of people who their activity starts by 6:30, 7 o'clock. You keep seeing them roaming up and down street, beggars particularly. These people like Nyesom Wike once said, may not be beggars. I don't even know what the beggar is doing on the street in the first instance. Cattle rearing is still here. I don't know how many grass that are here that are within the federal secretariat that you see cow moving up and down the whole place and stuff like that. We should remove politics from whatever we are doing and face reality, whether we like it or not. If they don't kidnap Tijani today, they may kidnap Oka for tomorrow. And next tomorrow, it might be Ibrahim. So let's remove sentiment and go after what is just the common enemy.
Okay.
Thank
you so much, gentlemen. That's our program for today. Dr. Ferdinand Ikwang, former National Coordinator, De-Radicalization Program, Director, Horizon Edge, a security outfit in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And Mr. Michael Mbanefo, lawyer, engineer, and security analyst. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for investing your time with us. See you again when we bring you a fresh edition of the program, People, Politics, and Power. And do remember that security is everyone's responsibility. Not just the security agencies, but each and every one of us. You hear something, you say something. Bye for now.